You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Okay, welcome to another Word in Your Ear. We're delighted to be joined all the way from the Crescent City, New Orleans, by Rickie Lee Jones. Hello, Rickie. Nice to see you.
Great to see you.
I'm so glad to be here. Hello. I just got out of my shower. You have to forgive me if I do pretend English accent when we talk. It's like a virus. It's so rude. So I hope I don't do it sometimes.
So we're here to talk about your fabulous book, Last Chance Texaco, which has just come out in the UK. Tell us where this started. Have you been thinking about this for ages? Was this something you've been working on for years? Go on.
Sure. The stories of my family, you know, I've told to myself since I was a little girl, the stories of my mother. She told to me at bedtime, my brother and I. So the stories are cemented into who I am. And the older the story, the funner it was to tell it. So I spent over half the book talking about family because it is a story of family that leads to this one little girl who goes on to live this life. I tried to write it like fiction.
Right.
And I started back in 1983 or 4 in this tour for the record called The Magazine. It was an aborted tour. We only did a half of the United States, but it was a theater piece. And in it were some of my father's stories, the scorpion, the cigar, some poetry and some music. And I would say that's the very beginning of what eventually became the book. Yeah.
Tell us just a little bit about your Vaudevillian grandparents, Myrtle Lee and Peg Lee, Peg Leg Jones, and they're absolutely riveting. So being part of a family of entertainers obviously had a big impact.
One of the things I wrote that I like to say again is that, well, we had these scrapbooks that Peg Leg had saved for his entire career. And when, you know, we'd ask to look at the scrapbooks and Father would bring them out like the Torah and open them up like the holy books that they were. And the pictures of him in character. And he did a kind of rebel character, and he was a one-legged dancer and acrobat and singer, played the ukulele incredibly, a man of his time. You know, it might not translate that well now, but one thing you can say for vaudeville is they gave people with, I don't know if this word is popular anymore, but they gave people with handicaps a chance to do what anybody else could do. And you don't see that on stage now. There aren't any one-legged women singing, you know. Just imagine Beyonce or one-legged woman. So
have you ever found yourself playing theaters that your grandfather must have played?
Yes. Oh, yes. And I was watching for it in the first tour. We took a lot of pictures in front of Pantages. Pantages was a series of theaters, not just the one that's left in LA. And I think he got a contract with the Pantages. But wherever there was a leftover vaudeville theater in 1979 or 80, I stood in front of it or in the alley and took my picture.
Right. It's remarkable how good those theatres are for kind of modern amplified music, isn't it? Oddly, the atmosphere, and they seem to soak it up really well, don't they?
To be honest, I'm never in the audience, so I don't know. I don't know how it sounds. It's fun on stage, but I hope it translates into electric music.
Right. Now you write a lot. You write a lot about your obviously your early musical influences. There's no other word. I'm very taken by the fact that one of the things that first impressed you was West Side Story. Tell us about that and the effect that had on you, and when did that come into your life?
I was 8 years old when I went to see the movie with my big sister. And I can't say why, because I'm sure I was a real movie buff already, and I'm sure I had seen musicals, South Pacific, but nothing went in like West Side Story. Russ Tamblyn, who played Riff, just felt like one of my family or somebody I would meet someday and fall in love with. And in fact, I think that character ended up every boy I ever loved was Riff. And I would practice, I would practice all the scenes. So I lived out in the desert, and so you see me in the sagebrush trying to bring Tony back to life. And it just, I think the music, but also the beautiful colors that were unreal, that would be more stage colors in a film, were bewildering to me. And it caught me in a way that nothing except the Beatles, nothing ever did.
Well, we were going to ask you about that because there's a wonderful, wonderful description of you being, I think you were 9 years old when they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. And it's fantastic. Describe it. I think it's the whole country had the air knocked out of it. It's just such a wonderful description. So what was the impact? I mean, you went off and started writing one-act plays, didn't you, based on Beatles lyrics. So how did it affect you?
Well, I think, I'll talk about me, but it was a worldwide event as far as I could tell. Everybody stopped where they were. Who knows why, but everybody stopped where they were to look at those four lads from Liverpool with their long hair and their little matching suits, and they're always smiling. And I just, I fell in love with them. And the whole world fell in love with them. I mean, it was a frenzied love. It was spiritual and sexual, but it was something else entirely, as if this spirit that was the Beatles came to escort us out of the death of Kennedy and into a new and brighter world. They were, it's hard to describe their impact.
Yeah. But you didn't just want to be their girlfriend, did you? You say in the book you wanted to be one of them.
That's right. So I was practicing violin every day when the Beatles came out, and I wasn't very good at reading music. So the hoped for career as a violinist went down the tubes the moment that I saw them. And I wanted a guitar. My brother had a guitar, so I tried to sneak in and learn how to play the guitar. It became clear to me, so the paths to start growing in. You could grow in the path to be a pretty girlfriend. I even practiced smiling like Cynthia Lennon, which was like because she turned her mouth down at the end. So why would she do that? So I practiced, but it became clear to me that I was never going to marry a Beatle. That was not the way to go further. What I wanted was to be a Beatle. I didn't want to be a Beatle girlfriend. And while I might not have said it that clearly, I might have. I got my hair cut like a Beatle. I wore Beatle shoes and Beatle rings. And that's what you can do as a child. You can slip in between characters because you haven't committed to what you're going to be yet. So I was a Beatle and Cynthia Lennon.
Right.
Was some of that to do with the idea that you thought you were going to be a performer? Because there's so much, slightly later on, admittedly, about you feeling there was an incredible transformation from being, as you put it, the ugly duckling. And you say lots of performers feel this, that from being shy and a bit awkward, you're on stage singing and you feel that you belong there. So why was it? What was it about that sensation of being in the spotlight that made you feel like that?
Maybe in my case, I was already always performing to this invisible eye, always talking to it. I had an invisible friend, but the invisible eye is something more. It's the feeling that I'm always being watched. And so it's not that big of a leap to stand in front of an audience and be watched by them. I'm guessing. I don't actually have the answer, but it was from the time I was a little kid, it was the place I felt most at home. I liked bowing as long as I could. I like that applause. I like people as a collective entity of one rather than having to deal with them one at a time. It was good for me.
Yeah. There's lots of stories in the book about your wanderings as a young person. I think it's fair to say that you were you're a proper old school rebel. You're expelled from school. You're jailed for leading a lewd and lascivious life. You know, what did your parents think of this at the time? What do you think about it now? And you've got a grown-up daughter now. I mean, how do you regard the life that you led at that time?
Well, the first part of that would be that I come from people who were rebels. The stories of my mother and grandmother running from the law, because the law was trying to remove all the children from my grandmother's care. So that was already our story. You know, once that's mother's story and she tells it to her children, it becomes children's story too. They're going to identify with that. So be careful what stories you tell. So I had already learned we're the people who are defiant, or the fighting Irish, they used to say. And we do what we think is right, not what we're told to do. And that I got that message early on. So when I did things like got kicked out of school for wearing a hat in class, or got kicked out of school for being, what was it, an undesirable element, my parents were behind me. They were, you know, I can't swear, but these people and these institutions, and they stood by me. They never took the side of the other side. When we got home, they might go, but they never did it in public. We were solid. So yes, I think I was a rebel by trade, but I came from a family that supported that, a family of artists and people that, for good or bad, and it just depends on what light you put these stories in, for good or bad, went their own way all the way down the line. And the good part of it is it fed my imagination and my sense of myself as different from other people, which was hard as a kid. But now, here I have a place that the world likes a different person in this job here.
All right.
You talk about being rebellious and you know, obviously you're naturally attracted to other rebels. And I have to ask you about the Lowell George section, which is absolutely amazing. And you meet him and you have this wonderful love affair. And then and he records one of your songs, Easy Money, but he never tells Warner Brothers that you have any more material. And there's somebody, I can't remember who it is now, who says, well, he wanted to keep you all for himself. Did you feel resentful about that? I mean, it doesn't come across in the book at all, but maybe you did.
So how that went down was Lowell recorded Easy Money, and it you know, it seems like there are a series of things that were the moment, but this one, when he said, I'm doing your song as a single on my record, was the moment where my life changed for the better. Where I went after was mine, but so he did that, and he was a ladies' man, and all of that. And we had a wonderful brief time together. But later, when I played these 3 concerts to get A&R guys to come out, when I met Lowell George and when I met Lenny Waronker and Russ Titleman, they told me, you know, Lowell never brought any of these songs to us. They never he didn't tell us anything about your other work. We asked him and he said he didn't have anything. So we think he wanted to keep you for himself for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, you know, I repeat that to you, but, and I don't know if it was in the book or got edited out, but in telling what really happens behind the scenes, I don't want to take away any glory or romance that people have about Lowell or Lowell and me.
Right.
It's wonderful. But yes, everything's complicated and nothing is just good or just bad, you know.
Yeah. Because the other figures that clearly played a hugely important part in your story is Tom Waits and Chucky Weiss, you know, all these people who, you were all kind of characters in each other's songs, weren't you? That's a curious thing to happen in somebody's life, isn't it?
Isn't it? Well, I feel like, just from my view, that I was rising. It was a destiny long awaited. And each step I took that year took me closer to the thing that I was hoping to have, which was a record album of my own. So Tom and I were exchanging ideas, but Tom was the famous one. So historically, and because people are sexist, they just are, they assume that I must have got that stuff from Tom. But if you just take a look, and it's important to say, men are influenced by women. Famous people are influenced by unfamous people. It's an exchange of information always going on, and it's not a one-way thing. So when you look at Blue Valentine and you see me there on the cover and you go, Blue Valentine, my funny Valentine. So this work of mine had an impact on my boyfriend at that time. And pieces of what he did definitely came out of me. That's the wonderful exchange that happens. And hopefully, you're evolving, and the things that look like big, boy, she's got a big piece of Tom Waits, eventually thins out into a finer thing. And the same thing with your partner, with the man. So,
right.
With Waits.
Now, you say you're waiting for something to happen. It did happen in a very big way, quite quickly. Well, it certainly appeared so from the outside. It no doubt didn't appear like that to you. But you write this wonderful part in the book, which I think is probably about 10 pages long, about appearing on Saturday Night Live, which was clearly just an absolutely crucial day in your life, wasn't it?
It's the most marvelous description of what live television is like. It's so good. There's a lovely bit where you go, have I got my hat on? Am I holding my guitar? This whole moment is frozen, But did you feel this is an absolutely make or break moment?
I did. I knew it was. And yet there's a part of me, even then, that can separate itself from the terror and frenzy of those things and say, it's already happened. You already did it, and it was good. And I just separate and go, all right, let's go do the job. We already did it, and it was great. And I don't know if I wrote that, but that kept me calm, even at that very first moment that I stood in front of the camera. Because if you get too scared, your mouth will get dry. You'll make a mistake, or you'll stutter or something, which I've done on TV many times. But I didn't do it that time because it was there. See, I just did it because it was a make or break moment that some part of my soul or heart went, this is where you get it all right. So go for it and get it right.
And it just took off just instantly, didn't it? It was absolutely amazing. And there's a bit in the book where you said that Lenny Waronker said to you of that first album, he said, we're going to reap teen coin with this one, kid. So there's a wonderful expression. Now, why was he so convinced that it was going to be such a huge commercial success?
There was a sense that, it's hard to explain, but there was this feeling that this music sounds kind of new. This is different. So there was, if you were writing a chord and making a movie out of it, you play this little chord right now, just maybe 2 notes of something's coming, something good, maybe tonight. So you play this chord. But Chucky's in Love was such an odd bird, right? It stops in the middle, talks. Yeah. It's kind of funny, which isn't usually popular in pop music, but it had that great old-timey chorus. And, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But we had no idea. I didn't. I had no idea. Actually, that's not totally true. I think that's what I hoped. I didn't dare believe, but that's what I hoped would happen. Everybody and they did. Everybody came to, what is that song? At least in America. I'm not sure about England, but
no, in the UK, it was a
huge.
It was a big thing in the UK. And then your second album, Pirates, which many people think is your best record. It seems to be the one that a lot of people talk about. It's very different, isn't it? In the sense that it's very expensive. You got the best musicians. Everybody's charging top dollar and so forth. Did that feel very, very different at that point?
I felt very important. It felt very, very, very important. Excuse me, I'm very important. And that actually was the main difference. And I was taking drugs by the time we got into the studio for Pirates, I'd started to take drugs, which made me less dependable. I showed up late, hours late. But when I showed up, I did good work. I did the horn parts. I did everything. It was just really, I was not as a musician, but as a little girl, I was losing my way. Pirates is interesting for a couple of reasons. When you make a debut record, you've really had your whole life to gather those songs together and pick the best ones. In my case, I'd only been writing a couple of years, but I'd had my whole life to make those songs. Now, we want that second record, right? And there's pressure on you that wasn't there before. Before you were trying to get the pressure. So
Yeah.
And I knew this phrase sophomore slump, or that the expectations were that the next record would be bad. And maybe on the third record, people would start to go, oh, it wasn't just a fluke. And I would, that's not going to happen. You know, my second record is going to be great. I'm not following anybody's formula. And so with that in mind and nothing else, I started writing songs that were more like little cinematic pieces of the characters I had suggested in the first record. I'm going to drop, Damon Runyan pictures of characters I've made up and also met. And I'm going to put them, I'm going to kill one of them, and we're going to hear a movie about my emotions as told through the characters I've created. And maybe that's why people think Pirates is greater. I personally don't. I think the first record are the most beautiful songs. And Pirates is, just to me, Pirates is great for that it was defiant and created films of songs. But I don't know, I am not experiencing it from the other side. And I happen to think that Flying Cowboys was also a beautiful record, maybe too many great songs. But in 1988, when it came out, everything was Madonna and drum machines and stuff. That's Wang Chung tonight. And so it wasn't really the greatest time for what I like to do and what I do to reach mass appeal. The wheel had changed, but I had decided not to chase it, and for good or bad, began this journey of writing my own vision. And luckily, I had had a fierce fire of fans. Ooh, that's nice. A fierce fire of fans who stayed with me along the way. Sometimes expanding, sometimes smaller, but managed to stay in show business in spite of having no videos and no songs on the radio and not a lot of support. And yet here we are talking. So there is some true interest in the music, regardless of how big the promotional machine is.
You must have felt when you had so much success so fast. There's an amazing description of you going off and playing tours in Germany and being completely unprepared for these huge audiences. There's a riot at one stage and people are throwing folding chairs at you, and you must have thought, I can't sustain this level of commercial success. And that's partly why you would have taken the course you've just described. Would that be right? Exactly.
That's exactly right. I knew that up here, this is the introduction. Oh, she's so different. What is she like? But it's got nowhere to go but down. So when it goes down, how far down is it going to go? I'm going to control it. I'm going to decide how far down it goes. I'm making this record. And luckily, I had a few journalists who were smart and devoted to the music already and interested in me as a person continuing. So they wrote really important things. I don't know if it helped sell any records, but it did help cement the idea of me as a person of substance.
Right.
Yeah.
So the book kind of finishes in the early 80s, doesn't it? 1983.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was exactly what I did not want to do. I did not want to write about the success and end it. I had set out to do anything but that because that seemed so disrespectful to the bulk of my life and my career. But
well, you still have 14 albums to make when the book ends, really. So why did you decide to end it there? And will there be another?
Because the book wanted to end there. The storyline led there. And when I wrote more, I was pasting clay on that just didn't belong. And you could feel the division. It was the book just didn't want to go further. Here's the big story. So obviously, I am working on more stories. It's a different kind of thing I'm doing. And I don't know if I'll, represent myself. Right now, I'm telling short stories of people with no agenda. So if I represent myself and say, okay, here's a woman's life from the age of 33 to by the time it comes out to 70 or whatever it is, here's a woman's life. That's the one thread that was in there. So maybe I'll pick it up. But then again, it might be a very different kind of book. We'll see.
Why did you call the book Last Chance Texaco? I mean, it's obviously it's a track on your first record, but why do you choose that as the title of the book?
And it's very evocative. I think I saw that people were already using it. There were a couple books out with my title, and it was in some kind of urban dictionary. So. Yeah, it was like Last Chance Texaco. What are you talking about? You can't have that word. So, but for me in my life, the feeling that there's so many last chances, and there's so many times this girl is on a road headed toward a light. What will the light bring to her? What's that like for you when you're on a road and you're trying to get somewhere and it's your last chance? We've all had that happen to us. So it's a great title for me, and it's evocative, and it's a good title for others to come to, I think.
It's a great title. It's a great book. And it's out now in the UK. It's been very nice to talk to you, Rickie.
Thank you.
How's life in New Orleans? How long have you been there?
You guys are pretty cool too. Life here is a lot better for me than life in LA. Because the folks here, and I don't know about the rest of the South, but the folks here are very friendly. Right. If I go out, if I took you with me and we went out that door, the first thing that would happen is whoever was walking by would go, hi. So everybody greets everybody. And so invites you out of yourself and into the world. It's the opposite of LA, where people look away and try to protect themselves. Yeah. And for me, it's been, you can see me, I'm kind of a happy person. I like being called out to be part of the world because I can be very reclusive. And so it's a friendly, wild, wonderful place that you can partake in or not. But you can't escape saying hello to people every single day of your life. That's pretty cool.
Lovely. That's really good.
Well, thanks very much for talking to us.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.